Oh no, I can't do both of those. The downside of live. I am not addressing weaklings, or I should not take the trouble to come here. I'm addressing strong, vigorous men who are engaged in the active hard work of life. And life to be worth living must be life of activity and hard work. I'm speaking to men engaged in the hard, active work of life, and therefore to men who will count for good or for evil. Theodore Roosevelt.
From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where performative emotional incontinence isn't just a political philosophy, it's a way of life. And it's a life full of feelings and emotions and feelings. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America and all ships at sea. Welcome to the Blast Radius. So glad you could join us this evening. Here is your golden age of Western civilization news roundup for the week ending 7 March 2025. Dateline Buckingham Palace, home of the Grand Emir of Britannistan. Monday, 3 March. Disgrace outgoing Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, met with his sovereign, Charles III, King of Canada, earlier this week, and as you might expect, they had a good long cry together and talked about how mean the bad orange man is. But wait, before we get to all that, we've got a problem here, because there's a bit of a problem with the King of Canada styling himself as Charles III. You know why? Because Charles I was never King of Canada. That dude got his head removed from his shoulders without ever having claimed or held that title. So, if we are being technical sticklers about the whole thing, and of course we are, it was Charles I's little boy, Charles II, who was the first British monarch who was ever proclaimed King of Canada. So, if we are actually living in a world where the rules freaking matter, the current King of Canada should be styling himself as Charles II and not Charles III. And this isn't the first time something like this has happened. And if there are any Scots watching right now, they know exactly what I'm talking about, because when the late lamented Queen Elizabeth II first ascended the throne in 1952, and they put her royal monogram on all the post boxes in Scotland, all the Scots said, "Nah, fuck that, mate. Scotland never had no Queen Elizabeth I." And it was a fair point that they raised, because, in point of fact, good Queen Bess Elizabeth I was not ever the monarch of Scotland. Now, where am I going with all this? I'll tell you where. Netflix is where I'm going, because Meghan, Duchess of Sussex and of Malibu, had the debut of her new Netflix show this week, and it was so widely mocked it actually went viral in the worst of all possible ways, by people hate watching it just so they could make fun of the damn thing and get all the jokes when they watched the inevitable YouTube videos that made fun of it. And before you laugh too hard, that thing has just been renewed for a second season, just on the strength of sucking hard enough to generate a critical mass of YouTube hate viewing. And that's basically where we are now as a culture. The worst show in the whole wide world can get renewed for a new season just because people enjoy making fun of it. And it's a strange destination in which to wind up, when it was, 10 years ago that they had their wedding? Not even that long? I'm just saying, I bet on the day Meghan became a royal duchess, she was not imagining that, a decade from today, I will be living in Los Angeles and hoping enough people hate my new Netflix show that it gets picked up for a season 2. Meanwhile, the King of Canada and his #1 subject are still weeping softly in a corner together because, hey, as we know, that's just what real men do. Dateline Washington, Tuesday, 4 March. Representative Al Green, Democrat of Texas, was officially censured by the House of Representatives this week for his antics during President Donald Trump's address to a joint session of Congress, in which he jumped up and waved his cane around and shouted some nonsense nobody cares about and kept right on shouting it until Speaker Mike Johnson was left with no further recourse but to restore order in the chamber and to have Mr. Green removed by the Sergeant at Arms. And how have the congressional Democrats responded to Mr. Green's censure? Yep, that's right. You guessed it. By turning him into a civil rights martyr. So Al Green goes on some Houston radio station and he says, well, yeah, obviously the only reason they censured me is because they think black people should be back out in the fields picking cotton. Which, I mean, who can deny that you can draw a direct line between point A and point B on that one? It's inarguable, really. You've got to be some kind of unconstructed white supremacist hood-wearing KKK motherfucker if you can't see the correlation between guy gets in trouble for interrupting a speech and all black folks should go back to sharecropping. I'm just glad someone was finally brave enough to blow the lid off of the conspiracy. Now, if I gave you a free pick of every congressional Democrat and I asked you to guess who was most likely to be enthusiastically on board with that theory, we both know you would say Jasmine Crockett, and we both know you would be right. Jasmine says the way Speaker Johnson spoke to Al Green on the floor of the House chamber was clearly designed to evoke the way that slave masters used to speak to their field hands. Meanwhile, if we're looking for a punch like close to this story out with, we need to look no farther than a look at Al Green's legislative record, such as it is. How many bills has Al Green introduced in the House since 2017? 9. How many of them were not Donald Trump impeachment resolutions? 0. Dateline Paris, Wednesday, 6 March. France bravely rode to the defense of Europe this week. I'm sorry, I thought I could say it with a straight face. I was wrong. When President Emmanuel Macron told the nation in an address on Wednesday evening that Europe must be prepared to defend itself and Ukraine without the aid of the United States. And look, as much as we all like to make fun of France, I think they and their cute little metrosexual president are entitled to a bit of a polite little golf clap on this one because, yes, thank you, you guys are finally getting it now. When there's a post-Soviet border dispute in Eastern Europe, the absolute last thing that you guys should be doing is gazing across the Atlantic at us and wondering when we are going to come fix the thing. President Macron and British Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer, two effete metrosexual douchebags who are currently the nearest thing Western Europe has to strong male leaders, they've both been very enthusiastic lately about assembling what they call, with a straight face, a coalition of the willing, because it doesn't really make me overflow with confidence when you were borrowing your phraseology from George W. Bush in the Iraq War, but moving on. To go in and solve the whole problem in Ukraine without the involvement of the pesky United States, since we keep asking wildly appropriate questions about what the hell happens to all the money we are dumping into this bottomless black hole of graft and corruption. And it's really kind of amazing and kind of impressive just how easy it is for Trump to manipulate these idiots into doing the exact thing he wants them to do. It's just like with the Gaza thing. All Trump had to do was just blurt out some fanciful tale off the top of his head about, yeah, we're going to go in, we're going to take over Gaza, we're going to rebuild it, we're going to turn it into a really classy resort within a matter of hours. For the first time in decades, all of a sudden you got the Egyptians and the Jordanians holding emergency meetings talking about solving the problem by themselves, which, of course, they should have been doing all along this whole time. And it's the same thing in Ukraine. If the perception of Trump being difficult to deal with means Europe taking the lead and solving European problems without us having to finance and babysit the whole damn thing, more power to you. Now, do I have any actual faith in France and Britain being able to pull off the thing they are talking about being able to pull off? This reporter was not born yesterday. What do you want from me? The point is, if we are going to usher in a new golden age of Western civilization, it is up to all of us to occasionally engage in irrational optimism that flies in the face of our better judgment. Dateline Moscow, Thursday, 6 March. In a related story, Russia said on Thursday, in so many words, that French President Emmanuel Macron is a pathetic little bitch for suggesting that Europe could even think about defending itself and Ukraine against Russian aggression without any material support from the United States. And you know what I love about the Russia-Ukraine war? It's really easy to have a rational, nuanced discussion about it without crazed maniacs emerging out of the woodwork and telling you what an awful person you are for saying that thing you just said. And clearly you are working for the side that I don't support. So if I were to say something like, Russia is not wrong about Macron being a weak, impotent little saber-rattling douche, recent experience would suggest that somebody in the chat will immediately declare me a Russian agent in the direct employ of the Kremlin, which, for the record, I am not. Now, that guy, Colonel Vladimir Vladimirovich Kurmudgeonov, him I am not so sure about. I would keep my eye on that dude. The point being, I think a lot of people need a reminder that life is not a freaking football game. Just because there is a war somewhere in the world, it doesn't mean you have to pick a side to root for. It's okay to think war is bad and the killing should stop. That's all President Trump wants. And what does he get for trying to be a peacemaker? He gets hatred, abuse, lame allegations about Russia. Now, if you're one of those wild-eyed Ukrainiacs that just wants to fight the Ruskies for the sake of fighting the Ruskies, I would invite your answers to the following questions. First, how much do you know about the history of the regions in question over the course of the last 800, 900,000 years? How much do you know about when and why the current boundaries of Ukraine were first ever drawn? How much do you know about the ethnic makeup and the popular political proclivities in Donetsk and Luhansk and the Donbass and Crimea? Do you know that Sevastopol has been the home port of Russia's Black Sea Fleet since the mid-18th century and that Crimea is largely Russian because of it? Would it make any possible difference in your life or the life of any American if the regions that are currently in Russian hands, regions that are primarily populated by ethnic Russians who would, all things considered, prefer to be part of Russia, remained in Russian hands as part of a peace settlement? I'll answer for you. No, it would not. You would forget about it within roughly 48 hours. You would take the little Ukraine flag off your social media profile and you would move on to next current thing. Because you never had any interest in understanding the root causes of this conflict or learning about the history. You just wanted to be seen as morally virtuous. And you saw all the morally virtuous people putting little Ukraine flags in their profiles and talking about how bad the Ruskies are. So you did that too. But you're not virtuous. You're not aware. You're just a lemming who follows all the latest fashion trends. And worst of all, you're unbothered by how many human beings have to get sacrificed on the altar of your desire to feel superior. To put it more simply, shame on you, Mr. Low Information False Dichotomy man who thinks war is football. Please never vote again. Dateline Swampland, Friday, 7 March. In this week's feel-good human interest story, the Democrat National Committee's money laundering machine, fundraising platform, Act Blue, well, it appears to be in very deep trouble. One might say it's even an existential crisis. It appears that staff, including 7 senior officials, are all fleeing for the exits just as fast as their little feet will carry them. as many of them, perhaps not coincidentally, have begun receiving subpoenas from congressional committees who would love to ask them some questions about what Act Blue has been getting up to these last 4 years or so. 2 union organizations representing Act Blue employees sent a very excited letter to the board of directors earlier this week in which they lamented an alarming pattern, as they called it, of mass departures, which they say are eroding our confidence in the stability of the organization. And yeah, I think there's a lot of that going around lately. Industrial money launderers worrying that their organizational stability isn't what it once was. And I'm sure this newfound instability is totally unrelated to the shutdown of the USAID fraud machine and the newfound insolvency of the whole constellation of fake NGOs and dummy LLC shell companies that cling to it like the barnacles on the hull of an old warship. Oh, hi, Stacey Abrams. Yes, I actually was just talking about your fat ass. You see, Stacey is really the poster girl for this stuff. I just hope you have a lot of paper because it's going to be a really fucking big poster. Because she had herself a fake NGO that she started less than 5 minutes ago, and somehow, some way, that fake NGO got itself $2 billion in that last big drunken sailor spending bill that the Dems managed to get through as they were chucking those gold bars off the side of the Titanic. What was the $2 billion for? Energy efficient refrigerators for poor people in the Mississippi Delta. Why do they need different refrigerators? Because we have to defeat the sun monster. What, do you not know science? How many new refrigerators can you buy for $2 billion? Probably, one would think, at least one for every household in the Mississippi Delta. How many of them were actually bought? Unclear. Most likely 0. But the $2 billion is gone, that's for goddamn sure. And where might it have wound up? Oh, you be quiet, racist. That's all the roundup I've got for this week. I know you want more, but you're a bunch of greedy bastards and you got to be cut off at some point. Just like the guy in the bar who wants to buy everybody around at 158. Now, this is the part where I strap on the oxygen mask and try to catch my breath while you fine people are entertained by my distinguished colleague, your illustrious co-host, patriarch of the largest lower hominid colony east of the Appalachian Mountains, the one and only, your friend and mine, Mr. Caucasian Sasquatch.
Tactical nuke incoming!
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Blast Radius. Tonight, we have a couple of different things. The most wonderful thing about doing this type of a show is Trump pretty much writes the script. I don't have to do much. I just go pick up a few things. But on this particular episode, we're not watching Trump. It's Gavin Newsom that's actually got the boo. It's actually got the spotlight on this one, bro.
It's never a good way to open the program to say we are not watching Trump.
Joe Cool, you might be able to be Black Sasquatch if you put in enough effort. Maybe grow a beard.
We don't trust beardless men on this program.
Yeah, make beards great again.
Oh, did you like my beardless Trump AI picture I found for my video the other night?
Yeah, dude. Did I send you the bearded Trump that I found?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, great. Good.
I like the one that's bearded Trump on the back of an eagle going to rescue Frodo and Sam from Mount Doom.
That's unreasonable. So do you want to start with the Gavin Newsom Charlie Kirk thing or with the Slotnick? Oh my god, I can't believe that's an actual
Slotkin.
name.
I think we should start with the response from the senator who I lovingly like to call Senator Mommy Blogger, because that's what she sounds like. And then as we do this, we're going to lead into a discussion about a theory I have about all the disastrous consequences that have arisen from our choice to give women the vote 100 years ago. No, I'm just kidding, but not really. Go ahead.
Only partially. I mean, it's just the part you don't like that I'm kidding about.
Exactly.
Hi, everyone. I'm Melissa Slotkin. I'm honored to have the opportunity to speak tonight. It's late, so I promise to be a lot shorter than what you just watched. I won't take it personally if you've never heard of me. I'm the new senator from the great state of Michigan, where I grew up. I've been in public service my entire life because I happened to be in New York City on 9/11 when the Twin Towers came down. Before the smoke cleared, I knew I wanted to make a life in national security. I was recruited by the CIA and did 3 tours in Iraq alongside the military.
Sir, do you expect me to take this lady seriously?
She is opening by very plainly trying to establish for herself masculine credibility with all this national security 9/11 talk before she launches into the mommy blogger stuff and all the spurious appeals to emotion, which is really all you ever get ultimately with Democrat messaging.
Okay, but I kind of lost interest when she said she was tapped for the CIA.
I'm not
I
going to
mean,
say anything.
me neither.
Military. In between, I worked at the White House under President Bush and President Obama, 2 very different leaders who both believed that America is exceptional. You can find that same sense of patriotism here in Wyandotte, Michigan, where I'm speaking from tonight. It's a working class town just south of Detroit. President Trump and I both won here in November. It might not seem like it, but plenty of places like this still exist across the United States. Places where people believe that if you work hard and play by the rules, you should do well and your kids should do better. It reminds me of how I grew up. My dad was a lifelong Republican, my mom a lifelong Democrat, but it was never a big deal because we had shared values that were bigger than any one party. We just went through another fraught election season. Americans made it clear that prices are too high and that the government needs to be more responsive to their needs. America wants change, but there's a responsible way to make change and a reckless way. And we can make that change without forgetting who we are as a country.
And the reckless way involves snooping around the money we spend on
Yeah,
serving
yeah.
in DEI.
I was just fixing to say that it's kind of odd that the little wee didn't take place until the purse strings got cut.
And there is, as there often is, there is also the allusion to something called shared values, but never any elucidation of what those values might actually be.
Right, right. It's not the discussion of wholesome values, but the temptation of possible values dangled before you like a carrot. You are
Yes.
allowed to promote your own values in her statements. That
It
a
is an
great
appeal.
pause face.
It is an appeal to consensus
I'm
rather
not
than
trying,
an appeal to correctness.
I'm not trying to be that guy, but tell me something, boys.
And as a democracy.
Smash or pass? Three drinks
Not going
in.
to say anything.
So that's what I'm going to lay out tonight. Because whether you're from Wyandotte or Wichita, most Americans share 3 core beliefs: that the middle class is the engine of our country, that strong national security protects us from harm, and that our democracy, no matter how messy, is unparalleled and worth fighting for. Let's start with the economy.
Hold up.
You mean
No
our
matter
democracy
how
that just
messy.
resulted in a resounding victory for President Donald Trump?
No matter how messy. I don't know, man. That doesn't sound very.
Yeah, what
It's
does
not
that
very
word
forward
mean?
thinking.
Do we want to drill down on what that word means? Because I don't think that word can mean anything good.
Right. And so you're willing to accept mess.
Yeah, there seems to be some implication there of, oh sure, maybe we let a lot of people vote who shouldn't vote, and maybe we count the votes pretty imperfectly, but maybe we sometimes get it right more often than not, and hooray for us.
Yay.
Yeah, no, nah.
Literally invented the middle class. The revolutionary idea that you could work at an auto plant and afford the car you were building. That's the American dream.
No.
And in order to
No.
expand, protect the
No.
middle class, we have to do
No.
a few basic things.
No.
We need to bring down
No. Hold on. That's not it at all, madam. There's a house and a life that goes with that car that you're building.
Yeah, I think a lot of people from back then would be surprised to learn that their American dream meant being able to buy the car that they put the dashboard on.
Right?
I
I
think
don't like
I think Clint Eastwood's character in Gran Torino would be shocked to hear that.
that. Boomer.
Price of things we spend the most money on: groceries, housing, healthcare. We need to make more things in America with good paying union jobs and bring our supply chains back home from places like China. We need to give American businesses the certainty they need to invest and create the jobs of the future. And we need a tax system that's fair for people
Yeah, that's
who
what
don't
Trump's
have to
doing.
make $1 billion. Look, the president talked a big game on the economy, but it's always important to read the fine print. So, do his plans actually help Americans get ahead? Not even close. President Trump is trying to deliver an unprecedented giveaway to his billionaire friends. He's on the hunt to find trillions of dollars to pass along to the wealthiest in America. And to do that, he's going to make you pay in every part of your life. Grocery and home prices are going up, not down, and he hasn't laid out a credible plan to deal with either of those. His tariffs on allies.
Um,
Go ahead.
how long's Trump?
Say again.
How long has Trump been in office?
6 weeks.
So 6 weeks, and he hasn't solved every problem before us.
And what a
Well, see,
bastard he is.
Really? What were you saying?
Well, I was just gonna say that whole series of claims that she just made. It's just the same. They many of them still are singing from the same hymnal that they were singing from almost before. I don't know how old she is, but almost before she was born. It is still Republicans want to take away your grandma's health care, and they want to give tax cuts to billionaires. To which the most obvious retort is, why the fuck shouldn't billionaires get a tax cut? Every damn buddy should get a tax cut, and then they should get another tax cut, and then they should get another tax cut. And if the central government can't afford its operations after those tax cuts, then the central government should make economies and downsize and disempower itself.
Amen. Like, I need some cheering and stuff on tap. That was great. I'm gonna clip that shit later.
Like Canada will raise prices on energy, lumber, and cars, and start a trade war that will hurt manufacturing and farmers. Your premiums and prescriptions will cost more because the math on his proposals doesn't work without going after your health care. Meanwhile, for those keeping score,
There it is.
the national debt is going up, not down. And if he's not careful, he could walk us right into a recession. And one more thing.
I want a one in chat if you think recession might be a foregone conclusion. I think maybe that ship's already sailed and they've redefined it often enough that now you kind of just have to admit it.
And I do find it very quaint that the Democrats are still trying to play this good old, very well worn card of the Republicans want to take your health care away. Because if you want to talk just about everyday reality on the ground, as they say, if I go into any emergency room in California that is not a VA hospital, you want to know what kind of people that emergency room is going to be full of? It's going to be full of illegal aliens, and I'm going to be lucky to be seen within 8 hours. If I, maybe if I have some acutely life-threatening condition, they could rush me in sooner. But that's the reality right now, and the reason the reality exists that way is because people like Senator Slotkin supported policies that made it so. So don't even try to go down that road with me right now, madam.
Well said, sir.
In order to pay for his plan, he could very well come after your retirement, the Social Security, Medicare, and VA benefits you worked your whole life to earn. The president claims he won't, but Elon Musk just called Social Security the biggest Ponzi scheme of all time. While we're on the subject of Elon Musk, Is there anyone in America who is comfortable with him and his gang of 20-year-olds using their own computer servers to poke through your tax returns, your health information, and your bank accounts? No oversight, no protections against cyber attack, no guardrails they do with your private data. We need a more efficient government. You want to cut waste? I'll help you do it. But change doesn't need to be chaotic or make us less safe. The mindless firing of people who work to protect our nuclear weapons, keep our planes from crashing, and conduct the research that finds the cure for cancer, only to rehire them.
You know, I have it on good authority that that plane was actually destined for Australia. So it actually landed correctly.
Trump doesn't want to cure cancer. He's such a bastard.
Yeah, I mean, didn't we elect Biden? I thought cancer had already been cured.
I know. He was supposed to cure cancer in 2016 or before that. When did he get that job? Didn't he receive that job in like 20? I'm going to look up when he received that job. Play the thing.
No CEO in America could do that without being summarily fired. Okay, so we've talked about economic security. How about national security? Let's start with the border. As someone who spent my whole career protecting our homeland, every
Cap.
Yeah.
Full on cap.
country deserves to know who and what is coming across its border, period. Democrats and Republicans should all be for that. But securing the border without actually fixing our broken immigration system is dealing with the symptom and not the disease.
Nope, those
America
are
is
different
an
things. Stop conflating them. Those are different things. Border security laws and immigration laws are different things.
They are. Also, if you enforce the border laws that are actually on the books, it's almost like it solves itself.
Well, and one of the most important of those laws, possibly the one which was most widely ignored by Biden and the enemy saboteur Mayorkas, was the one that says you can't traverse a third country where you could have claimed asylum and then come here and claim asylum. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
But
The whole
millions upon
refugee
millions of people they allowed into the country by just ignoring that altogether. And it's lawlessness. There's no other word for it but lawlessness.
We need a functional system keyed to the needs of our economy that allows vetted people to come and work here legally. So I look forward to the president's plan on that. Because here's the thing, today's world is deeply interconnected. Migration, cyber threats, AI, environmental destruction, terrorism. One nation cannot face these issues alone.
Hold on. I feel like for sure she missed a buzzword. Environmental terrorism. You didn't say the economy, stupid.
It is the economy, stupid, or so I've heard.
We need friends in all corners, and our safety depends on it. President Trump loves to say peace through strength. That's actually a line he stole from Ronald Reagan. But let me tell you, after the spectacle that just took place in the Oval Office last week, Reagan must be rolling in his grave. We all want an end to the war in Ukraine, but Reagan understood that true strength required America to combine our military and
You don't need to worry about Ronnie's cadaver, sweetheart. Just don't worry your pretty little head about that.
You're not evoking the ghost of Reagan to try to.
You do not get to decide where Reagan rolls.
You know, Reagan had a whole bunch of really funny jokes.
I love Reagan. Did you see the Reagan movie?
Maybe. Was it recent?
Yeah, it was last year. Dennis Quaid.
I guess not. I'm gonna have to check that out.
It wasn't bad. I enjoyed it.
Moral clarity. And that scene in the Oval Office wasn't just a bad episode of reality TV. It summed up Trump's whole approach to the world. He believes in cozying up to dictators like Vladimir Putin and kicking our friends like the Canadians in the teeth. He sees American leadership as merely a series of real estate transactions. As a Cold War kid, I'm thankful it was Reagan and not Trump in office in the 1980s. Trump would have lost us the Cold War. Donald Trump's actions suggest that in his heart, he doesn't believe we're an exceptional nation. He clearly doesn't think we should lead the world. Look, America is not perfect, but I stand with the majority of Americans who believe we are still exceptional, unparalleled. And I would rather have American leadership over Chinese or Russian leadership any day of the week. Because for generations, America has offered something better. Our security and our prosperity, yes, but our democracy, our very system of government, has been the aspiration of the world. And right now, it's at risk. It's at risk when the president decides you can pick and choose what rules you want to follow, when he ignores court orders and the Constitution itself, or when elected leaders stand by and just let it happen. But it's also at risk when the president pits Americans against each other, when he demonizes those who are different and tells certain people they shouldn't be included. Because America is not just a patch of land between two oceans. We are more than that. Generations have fought and died to secure the...
Hold on, madam. You don't believe that that patch of land between two oceans is a thing in the first place, which is why you want to erase the borders.
Correct,
So,
which is why they do stupid land acknowledgments each time they hold an event. They don't get to talk that way based on their recent behavior. They don't get to play both sides like that.
you will try.
You don't get to celebrate American exceptionalism while also calling American pioneers saying they're guilty of genociding an entire continent. You can't have it both ways.
Those rights and the fight for them make us who we are. We're a nation of strivers, risk takers, innovators, and we are never satisfied. That is America's superpower. And look, I've lived and worked in many countries. I've seen democracies flicker out. I've seen what life is like when a government is rigged. You can't open a business without paying off a corrupt official. You can't criticize the guys in charge without getting a knock at the door in the middle of the night.
That's your side.
Yeah,
Is this projection?
The side that just spent 4 years trying to put the other party's nominee in prison, and they are making appeals to the rule of law.
Is this what they mean by crowd bullying?
Yes, that's an excellent call. That is exactly what this is.
Never thought I'd actually see it in the wild.
So as much as we need to make our government more responsive to our lives today, don't for one moment fool yourself that democracy isn't precious and worth saving. But how do we actually do that? I know a lot of you have been asking that question. First, don't tune out. It's easy to be exhausted, but America needs you now more than ever. If previous generations had not fought for this democracy, where would we be today? Second, hold your elected officials, including me, accountable. Watch how they're voting. Go to town halls and demand they take action. That's as American as apple pie. Third, organize. Pick just one issue you're passionate about and engage. And doom scrolling doesn't.
Activate?
They seem still spectacularly disinterested in understanding why they just lost the election.
Yeah. Well, it's because you're a racist bigot, sir.
Well, of course. We
that's-
just it is an interesting approach to trying to win elections when you deride half of the population as racist bigots and then ask them to vote for you.
And it's weird when some of them do.
That is weird.
To me.
It is a counterintuitive outcome, but it does happen.
Yes.
Doesn't count. Join a group that cares about your issue and act. And if you can't find one, start one. Some of the most important movements in our history have come from the bottle up.
Okay, somehow I don't think she
that's what Kamala said.
You got me, bro. I'm willing to believe that she probably would not support a Second Amendment group establishing and mobilizing the way she's suggesting.
Yeah, probably not. And you'll notice as we get into the last minute or two of this thing that she really starts dialing up the spurious appeal to emotions and feelings, which is where I want to go when we're finished with this.
Awesome.
Closing. We all know that our country is going through something right now. We're not sure what the next day is going to hold, let alone the next decade. But this isn't the first time we've experienced significant and tumultuous change as a country. I'm a student of history, and we've gone through periods of political instability before. And ultimately, we've chosen to keep changing this country for the better. But every single time, we've only gotten through those moments because of two things: engaged citizens and principled leaders. Engaged citizens who do a little bit more than they're used to doing to fight for the things that they care about, and principled leaders who are ready to receive the ball and do something about it. So thank you tonight for caring about your country. Just by watching, you qualify as engaged citizens. And I promise that I and my fellow Democrats will do everything in our power to be the principled leaders that you deserve. Good night, everyone.
It seems like a great place to start in being a principled leader would be not standing in the way of the investigation of graft, fraud, corruption, and abuse. Would it not?
I mean, double speak's not my first language. So forgive me if I missed the mark a little bit. Yeah, no, I don't have any issue so far, and this is something that I'm a little confused by. I'm being told by Democrats that all these horrible things are happening in these different places, but when you look into what Doge is actually doing, most of it is going specifically for the fraudulent accounts, the artificially generated aspect of these different systems. I haven't seen him actually go in on any particular system and do actual damage. It's all the duplicate accounts, the 300-year-old accounts, the things that should have been rubber stamped
things
out.
that are very clearly either duplicative or outright fraudulent is
Right,
all they're
obvious.
going after right now. Yeah.
And the fact that it's so much tells you how pervasive the problem actually is, and that a deeper audit should be done to root out the quote unquote legitimate fraudulent accounts.
And like I said the other night, I just hope that my 360-year-old great grandpa doesn't stop getting his Social Security check, because that'll cause real problems for our household.
Right.
He's a celebrity, you know.
I saw a meme. I saw a meme that said that Nancy Pelosi was that person.
But the thesis that I want to come at you with, and I want to come at the viewers with, is about, and sure, if you want to be technical, it goes all the way back to 100 years ago when we gave women the vote. And I think we don't spend enough time talking about the consequences of that. However, I think we can all agree that we live currently in a political reality where most, sometimes all of the political messaging, often from both parties, is female-oriented, designed to appeal to female sensibilities and female perspectives, and is nearly always, and especially I'm talking in terms of the fake news media here, is always, everything has to be couched in terms of feelings and emotions. Nearly every question has some version of how should people feel, or how does it make you feel, or what should we feel, and how do you feel? But that's a really radical departure from any kind of political discourse that has ever been commonplace before. And I think we don't do ourselves any favors when we are not cognizant of that and prepared to talk about it and the ramifications of it. And I also think that Donald Trump, in addition to being a corrective of a corrupt and wasteful and really incompetent system of governance that has prevailed for the last 30 years, not unique to one party.
I disagree. I don't think it's incompetent. I think it has very competently screwed the American people.
You got more?
No, that pretty much does it, bro. When somebody's sticking me in the butt with a red hot poker, I'd like to look back and see whose name's on the handle.
But anyway, we know that Trump is seen by a lot of his supporters, and correctly, as being a corrective to a system that they feel is hostile toward them. But I think he also is a corrective in another sort of way. I think he is a corrective against the feminization of the political discourse over the course of those same last 30 or 35 years, where this current awful strain of globalist uniparty neoliberalism has been ascendant. And I think that's something that the Democrats still don't understand, because they still appear to be doubling down on those appeals to emotion and feelings. And I don't think they appear to understand, while they're so busy looking at Trump and viewing him as so awful and repulsive and toxically masculine, they don't realize that people crave that masculinity because they see you having pushed things so absurdly far in the other direction.
Gay! Anyway, so what I was getting at was this. There's there's the argument to be made that the Democrat Party, or at least the powers that be within the Democrat Party, have actually become an organ of the global elite rather than an independent party in the United States. Now, does that mean that the Republicans are not that
No.
very thing? I think the fact that MAGA existed independent from the Republican Party says an awful lot about the fact that it does. Two wings of the same dirty bird. And MAGA doesn't seem to be wholeheartedly purchased by the heart of all that.
I think everyone knows my view that when political parties are allowed to become institutions unto themselves, that is hostile to a well-functioning system of democratic self-government.
Facts. Anything else on Mommy Vlogger?
Senator Mommy Blogger. That's my
Senator Mommy Vlogger. Sorry.
That's my nickname for her. I'm not really. I don't know anything about her. I'm not sure why they chose her for this duty. It seems like they're just grasping and flailing, but do they really have? Is there anybody on the Democrat side who really could be seen as an exemplar of anything resembling masculinity? Because I alluded to this in my video the other night, how I was fascinated.
Yes,
Go ahead.
do they have anyone with beards?
No, and there's your first
Any
problem.
men? I'm sorry. Any men with beards? They do have a few women with beards.
I'll give you that. But I'm looking at the men in the room during the speech on Tuesday, specifically on the Democrat side, the male Democrats, as you know, they seem to be pretty wildly outnumbered by this point, but there are still a few of them. And as we know, the female Democrats like to make themselves the center of attention, so they wear their matchy little colored outfits and they wave their stupid little signs and they've got their little thingies and trinkets and whatever. And I'm looking at the men in the room on that side, and they just look like they want the earth to swallow them up. They want this ordeal to be over. It is like every embarrassed man of a husband of a domineering liberal wife that you've ever seen just bury his head in his hands as his wife is screaming across the restaurant that she needs to speak to the manager. It looked like that.
That's intense, bro. That's intense. I hate that. I hate it. Although I gotta say, and this is from personal experience, marrying a Karen is not all bad. Sometimes, if you happen to need to speak to the manager, it works out quite nicely.
And sometimes her name actually is Karen, and she's a really nice girl.
Hey, no, some of them are freaks. They
This is
get like
true.
this chip on their shoulder about being called a Karen, and they just want to prove how much of not a Karen they are. Let's skip that. We're gonna jump into some of this stuff here. Hate that
This
whole
is Gavin Newsom.
Okay, so you want to do the intro thing? I don't know if he'll claim it or not.
Then let's not do it.
All right, we'll skip that. So
Because we don't want to get claimed by that fart knocker.
So I got a couple of timestamps pulled up that I'm going to be jumping to, unless there's something specific you want to direct my attention to.
You drive the car, my friend.
The first thing I want to pull your attention to is the fact that Gavin Newsom, one of the strangest left-wing Democrat governors in America, mentions two.
Arguably the most radical leftist governor in American history, and also the worst and least accomplished.
Yeah, there's a few jobs that happened during this interview, but so he brings up his son and a niece in this conversation right here at the beginning, and I think this tells the story of why things are the way they are now and where they may be headed in the future. Thank you, sir.
What the hell?
Thank you, sir.
You put your 13-year-old... What does that even mean?
He's tucking him in, like, that's the wholesome image. That's the wholesome image.
I'm so creeped out right now.
But it's not wholesome when you realize it's a 13-year-old kid.
Not leave the house.
Did you let him take off school?
No, he did. Of course not. He's not here for a good reason. But the point is the point.
School.
I would love to know what that good reason is.
So he wants us to think that his 13-year-old listens to Charlie Kirk's podcast and requires being put to bed?
Yeah, on its surface, yes.
So many red flags already.
Hold on. See, this is one of those cases where the lie and the truth gets mixed together and becomes absurd on the face of it.
And you have to decide which one is actually worse.
Well, obviously, I would lean towards he doesn't tuck his son in at night, and that he does watch Charlie Kirk's podcast, and that he did ask to be here, but the idea that you're so upstanding that you made him go to school one day out of 22 years of schooling life, so he couldn't meet his freaking hero or whatever, that seems a little jaded, but whatever.
When my son was 13, I could have pictured him listening to political podcasts, but we were many years after the point where I tucked him into bed.
Right. That nervous laugh that you just heard was him saying, "Back off. I don't want to talk. You're talking about my children." That was the next step. The ha 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 ha. Right.
Yep. I'm trying to be relatable and approachable and position myself in the center because I know I've got a huge problem. I know I want to run for president in 2028. I know it's going to be my last chance, but I know the party is going to have lots of trepidation about nominating two hard left San Francisco Democrats in a row. So I have to refashion myself into something that is not that.
And can I admit that having Charlie Kirk on as your very first guest is not a terrible starting point.
But it would be a terrible starting point if Charlie Kirk acquitted himself better than he does here.
Well, that's my point. He just pulled out. Charlie Kirk backed off of that topic, I think primarily because there were children involved, and he realizes that's an untenable circumstance here. So
because he's the guest on the other guy's show.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Being a guest on someone's show, there's certain caveats that go with it.
Yeah. When you're on somebody else's show, you should be willing to show a little bit of deference, and there's nothing wrong with that necessarily.
All right. This is an interesting point. When he goes and doing this part of his like soliloquy here, because he does go on a bit at length. This entire process is being memory dumped directly from his long-term memory and out of his mouth. He
Yep.
might misspeak on some particular vagary detail, but I don't think there's any lie specifically here, right? There's not enough time between thought process and uh, speaking for there to be any duplicity in it.
And Gavin Newsom is the really the only guy the Democrats have right now who has rhetorical skills that are above average, because
As-
the only guy who can take a hostile question and manage to give something that sounds like a substantive answer but is really just diversionary horse shit, but he can make it sound like it's not. They don't have anybody else who can do that, and that is why they so assiduously avoid getting themselves into situations where they might have to face non-pre-screened questions that might be hostile.
Right. Right. No, this says a lot, actually. I don't know if it was so much Charlie Kirk pulling all of this versus Trump instinctively doing the showmanship in the right way at the right time. Do you reckon they actually collaborated on this thing, or was he taking advantage of the Trump train?
I tend to think it's the latter rather than the former.
Me too. I don't see Trump doing anything anyone anywhere ever says at all. Like ever. Like that might be the quickest way to get him to quit do something is tell him to do it. All right,
Yep.
so the next bit is wait, no. Hold up, I got you. Gadoosh. 620. So he goes back into the whole culture war bit of it after digressing off of the freaking mark for a little ways. He jumps back into it.
Well, he said Kamala Harris did better than she did in 2020, but she wasn't the candidate in 2020. Joe Biden was.
That's true. That is very true. So the next point on this is at the 10-minute mark. 10, 20, a little bit further back. Right. So this goes into the institutionalization of the Democrat politics into the college sectors and how this program, whether it's a policy, a program, a strategy, whatever you want to call it, entering into the college campuses, went to large effect to subvert the freshman class years ago. And those freshmen are now voting. And the implication here is that this entrance into the academic sphere was integral in Trump's being elected now.
Yes, right? and the reason it was integral is because we have allowed to be built an entire parallel economy around the horse shit of diversity, equity, and inclusion. It started off obviously in the college faculty lounge. It got funded there and financed there. They built departments around it. They started handing out degrees in all these made up nonsense subjects. But then we needed a place for those people with the nonsense degrees to work. So then it metastasized out into the private sector and the government sector pretty soon. Every big company, every government agency, every cabinet department had a DEI department or a DEI division, and we put more and more and more people in it because we need something for these people to do who were churning out with these worthless degrees. So and now we are just starting to tear that down and rectify and correct it. And obviously, if you're a person who has no real world job skills or qualifications, who only knows how to exist in that sphere of either academia or government DEI, then yeah, you're going to have a hard time coming up. And I'm sorry, but it is what it is.
Well, I find it odd that these are exactly the same people who are responsible for some absurd number of lawsuits a year.
Sure. Yeah.
Like that's their justification for the HR department is the lawsuits that occur back and forth, and yet they're the ones that tend to promote the concept of suing the employers, suing
And
coworkers.
I still am searching like it's a great white whale for an explanation of what a DEI manager does all day.
Wow. Accurate. All right.
And not only do they waive their degrees and credentials in everybody's faces, but they do it after their own policies have rendered those degrees completely meaningless.
Well, I mean,
I say it often. If I wanted a really good Ivy League education, I would go to Harvard in 1955.
right, dude? Wouldn't you be there? No, that's a little earlier. I might have to go earlier, bro. I'd have to be there with H.P. Lovecraft and stuff, you know. Like, gotta go do the thing. Meet all.
You just
the
have to
people.
go. You have to go before the fucking baby boomers got there, and then you're okay.
I guess you're right. Well, I mean, government subsidy is what ruined college in the first place, and college was where this entire mind virus was developed, designed, and built and perpetrated onto the American people by way of government subsidies through the university system directly into your children's brains. So that here we are, freaking 25 years later, and you've got a grown ass teacher telling you that not only is he no longer a man, but he's also a kitty cat who has to poop in a litter box in the hallway.
Yep, and I was right there witnessing it at ground level when it happened, because it happened between my junior and senior year in high school, because I got there to do my senior year class schedule, and they said, nope, no more shop class, no more vocational anything. Everybody is college prep. Everybody has to go to the university now. That's the way it is, always and forever. All that stuff you used to take shop class for, we're just gonna have fucking immigrants do all that work. It'll be great.
Great. Yeah, no. When I was in, I think it was 10th grade, I was going to do a vocational diploma, and some of the credits that I'd gotten my freshman year when I'd considered academic diploma were transferred over as. Anyway, they dropped one of the diplomas entirely, forcing me to either choose between like a remedial GED style diploma for the full amount of time that I was actually in school, or go for an academic diploma. So after thinking on it, I went for the academic diploma, which meant that I would have one extra hour that I would have to take my senior year, right? When I rolled around to my senior year, they changed the diplomas over again, and I lost 3 credits, meaning I was supposed to do an entire like full day every day. And I'd already lined up like a job for the year and stuff. Like the whole thing was
Yeah,
ready
exactly.
to roll.
Yep.
And they just pulled the rug out from under me on that. And it pretty much went downhill from there. Like I just ended up with a GED and a library card, made that shit work.
I just read earlier this week, and I was really delighted and encouraged to read it, that Linda McMahon, the newly minted education secretary, has actually rescinded that guidance that the education department issued 30 odd years ago that says, don't do shop class and vocational classes anymore. And I guess a couple states have already announced that they're going to bring shop classes back, and that's freaking awesome.
Absolutely is. Trade skills are really where the majority of the money for the majority of the people are. Everybody needs some trade service every now and then. And so as long as you've got trade skills, you can make it in the world.
Well, that whole model, that whole idea that we were going to have every kid go to college and get a 4-year degree and then, work in some fancy computer job in some cubicle farm somewhere. It was always stupid, and it was always unworkable, but we are still persisting with it decades and decades later. And thank God that we have people in charge who are willing to see it for what it is and get the fuck rid of it.
Now, there are a couple of better clips out of this, but for whatever reason, the upcoming clip is the part that the mainstream media seems to have gripped hold to run with. The implication being that Newsom is trying to pivot away from the more extreme left-wing concepts that he's been championing over the past few years and trying to become more centrist, as you said earlier in the segment. I don't disagree with that. And I do agree that he's making a pivot for the presidency. I just don't think he's got enough gas in his tank.
He has a few things working against him, as I mentioned earlier. I mean, they can't nominate 2 San Francisco Democrats in a row. They just can't. No matter how much of an extreme political makeover he gives himself between now and then, they cannot do it.
I don't see it, right? But what if he wasn't making the run for the presidency, but was aiming for the Senate?
I don't think he would have any interest in that, frankly.
All right, I'm just, throwing spaghetti at a wall. Do it.
As he stares past him and won't make eye contact.
Yeah, no, it's like he's got a scripted response that he's ready for at least some aspect of this because he completely bypasses what Charlie Kirk is saying and states that it's an issue of fairness and then dances around the corners for the rest of the freaking quote.
Yes, and he's going to be doing a lot of this over the course of the next few years as he wages this quixotic quest for the White House. But the way to defeat it is not by attacking the very creative non-answer that he gives to your question. The way to defeat him is by bringing the receipts and defeating him with his own words. Because every time he says that he doesn't want men and women's sports, you should be sitting there with a stack of 100 Gavin Newsom quotes where he was enthusiastically 100% in favor of that very self-same thing for years and years and years and years. And you don't get to just change your mind when you have that long of a track record. You don't get to. I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way.
Are you saying a wolf cannot change his fur, sir?
Indeed.
Oh, grandmother, what big eyes you have. Wow. That probably didn't quite land the way I'd hoped.
Crushed.
Yeah, but it's an easy fix. And I don't mean to be rude, but just don't be stupid.
But he
That's
knows
it.
that he knows this issue is going to be his biggest liability, and by extension, his party's biggest liability. And so that's why he's trying to get out in front as in terms of being the first prominent Democrat to openly run away from it. But when he tries to do that, and he's going to try and do it a lot, you have to be there with the receipts and throw his own words back in his face. Yep.
This is a body language moment right here. That is how he really feels about this subject. You are looking straight into the soul of this man's interior thought through a micro expression right here.
Yes, you are.
Despondency.
Yep. Not my fault. It happened before I got here.
They align with you.
Right. That was a 2-minute diatribe on how it's not my fault.
Yep. Just distancing and distancing and distancing.
What else is he supposed to do?
That's all he can do. And that's why you need to be there with the stack of receipts.
Right. And you think he should have just straight up burned him down and called him on all of it? Like right here, right now?
Well, it depends because, as we mentioned before, he is the guest on the other guy's show. So you have to, I guess, draw a reasonable line between how much am I going to engage in spirited debate and how much do I want to bring the receipts and burn the fucking guy down to the ground, which he could have done, but he chose not to do. It's not really for me to say whether that was correct or not correct.
Agreed.
I would have brought, if it was me, I would have brought the stack of receipts and burned the motherfucker down, but that's just me.
I want to point out the curiosity involved in the way these men have their legs crossed and then move on without comment. At this point, we're going to digress.
That was Charlie Kirk's high point in this entire interview right there.
Yes. There is a quote from Reagan. Reagan made a statement. I don't know who he quoted before this, but It's come to the point in this country where a Democrat can't see a fat man standing next to a skinny man without assuming the fat man took from the skinny man to get that way.
Yep.
And that is exactly where we stand on the precipice of perception today.
Yes, that if there is any end line disparity between any two groups of people, then the only possible explanation is some willful systemic disadvantaging based on some sort of immutable personal identity, which is nonsense and horseshit, but it's been the organizing principle of our government policy for decades now.
It comes down to the divide and conquer strategy. If we can pigeonhole everybody into little bitty pigeonholes and then divide them into even smaller groups within those pigeonholes, as like, do you take any particular conservative group and then break them down demographically, racially, religiously, ethnically, you pick your freaking slot. And you, by definition, are dividing these people up into different talking points and groups, and you can then use divisive language to drive the wedge between them. And that's been done to such a tiny point that every single individual is sitting out here feeling alone in their own thoughts until they get out and speak them.
Yes, and it is always the people who make the appeals, the false appeals to unity and consensus, who are engaged in the work of subdividing and subdividing and subdividing and creating subgroups and pitting them against each other and accruing power unto themselves that way.
And the weird thing about all of it is every bit of it reads like a social experiment from the mid-70s.
Which it pretty
You know,
much is.
It's the application of those experiments, which
Yeah.
I kind of feel like they maybe leaned a little too literally into it. Like, for instance, 1984 wasn't supposed to be a how-to manual.
Yeah, and we are over in the UK. They need a new adjective. They are way beyond Orwellian. I think peak Orwell was like 10 years ago.
Atlas Shrugged is
the word Orwellian just doesn't get the job done anymore. We need something new.
That's so sad, dude. Oh my God. If Orwellian doesn't cover it, I want no part.
Yeah, I mean, people being arrested for praying in their own homes is, and I'm guessing none of them were Muslim. Just, you know.
On a guess, I mean, I would agree with you.
Yeah, just a wild, and if we want to talk in terms of two-tier justice systems, which I guess the British government is only now starting to acknowledge as a thing that might possibly exist, which has been perfectly obvious to the rest of us for, you know, a decade or more now.
Yeah.
But they're I think Muslims in Great Britain have more special privileges than they do in any Muslim country.
Yes.
They have a set of unique rights and privileges that is unlike anything that any actual Englishman has. You know, I heard the latest trend in treasure hunt vacations is you have to go to London for a week and try to find an Englishman.
It's like a scavenger hunt.
My rim shot, Tim Eagle.
Yeah, it's over here on the thing. I wasn't ready for it. You have to like give me a signal or something, bro. Like,
you're fine.
You got to give me fair warning or it don't count.
I got all the singles you need, baby. There
Why
it
is
is.
it looped? Well, no, seriously, I firmly believe that what you're seeing in Europe now is a byproduct of, like I said earlier, the Democrat being an organ of the globalist agenda, right? And you're seeing the effect of those globalist activities in all of the countries in Europe currently, with the Ukraine war being the literal off-gassing of too much political pressure.
And why do we have a Russia-Ukraine war? Well, ultimately, we have a Russia-Ukraine war because 11 years ago, Hillary Clinton, Susan Rice, and Toria Nuland decided it would be a fun thing to make Ukraine into an outpost of American liberalism, and Obama told them to go for it. And how many millions of people have been sacrificed on the altar of their hubris since then? And that's still what they're fighting over.
To the Lord Moloch. Sorry, I couldn't resist. Yeah,
Nor
that's
should you.
sacrifice to something. I mean, that's not a case of like the Tree of Liberty type water.
No, not even close.
It feels more like a ladybird type scenario.
It is exactly the kind of cultural imperialism that Democrats always tell us they are opposed to.
Colonizing?
Just like much of this USAID money that was solely being spent on promoting wild American hard leftist political sensibilities in countries where they've never even heard of such things and had no use for them anyway. And I go back to the question which I keep asking, what does DEI in Serbia look like?
Those boys are pretty orthodox, bro. I mean, they're hardcore. I mean, is
there some vast untapped population of Black and Latino Serbians who need to be integrated into that country's public life? If there are, and I'm wrong, then I apologize wholeheartedly.
There might be a few. But yeah, we definitely want them integrated. I'm just saying,
What should we call the Black Serbians? Blurbians?
I can't do this, dude. Don't put one in front of me like that. I'm gonna get us both canceled.
That's why we're here.
Basically, no, you're not wrong. I don't know, dude. Like the whole thing. I wonder how much of these USAID money was actually being rerouted into like CA black products projects and stuff. Like how much of that was NSA operated, that kind of stuff.
One cannot help increasingly getting the feeling that basically a quarter to a third of our government is just a big fucking money laundering machine.
Yeah, sure. I get that. I mean, I thought that was the plan when we went to the petrodollar.
And maybe let's endeavor to have that not be the case anymore. Am I an extremist for wanting that? I guess maybe I
feel
am.
like if we transition from money laundering service to actual goods producer instead of consumer, there might be a throughput there that results in us making buku money by keeping the quote unquote petrodollar afloat against the wishes of the rest of the world, because that would put us in a very strong position for manifest destiny.
It's like we can launch the biggest economic boom of all time just by eliminating a fraction of the money laundering that our government is engaged in.
Right. And then suddenly everybody gets a check, everybody has a job, and nobody's too busy to do it. So,
and it's a weird thing to be opposed to, is all I'm saying. Is it that time already? It is that time already. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you ever so much for joining us here on the Blast Radius this evening. We sure do appreciate it when you come and spend these glorious 90 minutes with us here every Sunday. Now that the days are longer and we're getting into the summer, we're going to be still here for 90 minutes every Sunday weekend, and you are going to be here too, damn it, because that's what we do. Have a pleasant rest of your evening. Have a great week. We will see you here next Sunday. Same time as ever, same place as ever. We'll see you next time. Do not comply. Get off my lawn.
Give me the money. Give me the money.